Today on the show, we have a deceased member of the Senate, and we also have the US and Israel talking about integrating forces more formally, as well as some pretty devastating fires happening in Canada affecting the air quality all over the northern and northeastern United States. We got that and some more to talk about here on the We the Patriots podcast. I am your host, Sal Assante, and let's get right into it. So last week, I kind of stepped on my own toes by talking about Mitch McConnell, who is going through quite a health crisis at the moment, and it is unknown about how he's actually doing. And in the meantime, I missed a story that came out about merely hours before I actually recorded the show, talking about the actual death of a senator, and that, of course, is Lindsey Graham. Now, Lindsey Graham passed away on last Saturday, July 11th, and it seemed to be a pretty sudden issue in his heart. I'm not going to try to act like a doctor and talk like I know what's going on. What I really want to talk about is the replacement. And that, of course, if you have not seen, was recommended by people such as the president himself and many others in the conservative news space kind of area. And that, of course, was his sister, Darlene Nardone, I believe it is, or Nordone, going by Darlene Graham. Yeah, I don't really, to be quite frank, have any issue per se with Darlene other than the fact that she has literally no qualifications. Now, someone very smartly could say that neither does President Trump, and that's totally fair. That being said, the way that it works I believe it works if you are in Congress or the Senate, either one, but if someone is to pass away or step away from their duties, whatever it is, then it is appointed by the governor of the state until the next election, special election that can actually happen. So it's really interesting to me that someone with absolutely no history of political ties, I think the most involved she's ever been in politics was actually just helping her brother get elected to the Senate. And now she's going to be a senator in South Carolina. It's pretty absurd to me. Now that governor has all of the free will to do whatever they please. So I'm not saying that it's illegal or anything like that. It's more so wrong, in my opinion, from the sense that when you look at things about specifically talking about Lindsey Graham, his record, the war hawkishness, the major support for Israel, and kind of the issues that he's forerun for the last 10 years or so, his record is not great. Whether you want to talk about how hawkish he was with the Ukraine and Russia war, whether you want to talk about how much he was on the side of Israel, even when they were going through what many have deemed a genocide in Gaza. Almost all of his nastiness revolves around essentially just taking the side of whatever path leads us to war, and furthermore, really siding with the pretty much hardline conservative talking head kind of space. And so I can't imagine, and I'll be gladly proven wrong, I can't imagine that his sister's going to be really any different filling that seat. She is going to be beholden to the people that appointed her. You got to imagine she's going to essentially need to do their bidding. And whenever you have a situation like that, it kind of leads to what we're dealing with in the White House right now, which seems like someone is paying a debt. And that is never good for the people that are being governed by that individual. And in the case of being a senator, governing the entire country in a way. So we'll have to keep an eye out and see how that goes. My guess is it's not going to go great, but what can we do? Leading further into that point is the actual news that's happening in the Middle East as of right now. There's a couple of stories. Number one is that, of course, as I mentioned on last show, the memorandum of understanding was broken officially by both sides, it seems like. The U.S.'s side, we seem to be attacking civilian infrastructure, which is just mind-boggling to me, coming from where I grew up, what the standards of operation, especially militarily, were for the United States as a country. And to see that we are bombing bridges, railways, maritime watchtower, energy sites, and the like. Again, it's mind-boggling to me to think that this could be what our country is doing when, coming into Trump's first term, the big talk was that under Obama, our forces were too safe. They didn't take enough risks. And fair, you need your troops to be able to operate in a way that is going to not only keep them safe, but actually allow them to do their job. And okay, fine. But these are ordered strikes. These are coming down from on high, telling our soldiers and our pilots to bomb things that have no strategic military advantages to taking out. So where does that leave us? Well, it makes us definitely the bad guy in this situation. Not that we weren't always the bad guy. We started this conflict, but it's really hard to look at this and not see that our leadership is really leading us into something that we don't know the end of. I mentioned a few times, but last week, obviously, most recently, that the conflict, I am pretty sure, is going to drag on for months, if not through the year. And I'm pretty confident in that. The reason being is there's no real end in sight. But with that comes the inevitable decision that's going to have to be made, whether there's going to be people on the ground or whether we're just going to keep this bombing campaign. And to keep a bombing campaign like this up day after day, week after week, continually, is something that, as I've already kind of talked about, and many, many articles are now being written about the depletion of supply, and it's what it's going to lead to. And the inevitable hole that our nation is putting itself into in terms of being militarily prepared for anything else on the world stage. What a lot of people want to talk about is, what if something happens with Taiwan? What if something more dire happens in Europe and our help is needed? Yada, yada. As I'm sure you all can understand, I don't give a shit about anybody else but the United States. That being said, if something were to happen, I doubt that anything would happen with Mexico, but you never know. Doubt that anything would ever happen with Canada. You never know. But something could hit us on the home front. And the way that we're going about things, the depletion of our supplies and the usage of all of our munitions and our missile defense systems and everything else going on in Iran and across the world that we've been sending out to both Ukraine and Israel, it's alarming because, for so long we were able to essentially just help out. We weren't really involved in a conflict for some time, a large-scale conflict, I should say. We've always been involved in conflict, but we haven't been involved in a conflict like what's going on in Iran for quite some time. And now that we're doing that, but still feeding arms to Israel, still feeding arms to Ukraine that nobody really talks about, there is really a sense that we are being spread really thin, and nobody really seems to have an answer for it, especially when the Trump administration is going about things in this way. So with all that said, some of the scariest reporting came out about, I want to say 2 weeks ago. I wasn't really sure where it was going. Now it seems like it's here, being heavily debated, so I want to talk about it. And that is the potential integration, or I should say more formal integration, of U.S. and Israeli military. What does it mean? Well, the way that a lot of the skeptics, or tinfoil hats, if you want to call them whatever, a lot of those people are saying that this means that our militaries are going to be joint forces. And that is not true. Essentially what it is, or at least what it claims to be fair, what the bill that's going in front of, I think it's already in the House. I don't think it got voted on yet. What the bill is claiming to do is to formally integrate our military technology with Israel. Even with that being said, and knowing that we don't have joint forces, quote unquote, being proposed, this is still one of the scariest things I've ever read. And I'll tell you why. That quote that I often bring up, and I'm not going to be able to quote it now because I don't have it pulled up, but the quote that I often bring up from Washington's farewell address of us being intertwined militarily with Europe specifically, but anywhere else in the world, rather than looking out for our own interests. It is really visible and transparent that is so far in the rearview mirror that none of our politicians seem to care about. It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat. It doesn't matter if it's a Republican. If they have the opportunity to go and seize an objective that their own eyes have been feasting after, they're going to do it. They're going to utilize the American military might and our technological progress, and they are going to go and do that thing. And it's now gotten to a point where we are engaged in so many different things in so many different places, as I mentioned about 5 minutes ago, that as the American citizens, we clearly don't have a choice in the matter. It doesn't matter what poll you want to look at. what's going on in Iran is deeply unpopular. Continuing to support other countries like Israel or Ukraine is deeply unpopular. And it gets to a point where the leading class, the leadership, is no longer caring whatsoever what the general populace is feeling about anything. Now, that's been true, to be fair, to a certain degree forever. But where we're at now, and I think this also happens anytime that you have a quote unquote lame duck president, when you are put in a situation where someone doesn't need to get votes anymore and they feel like they have the power to do anything that they choose, so to speak, it starts to become a place where you are kind of afraid of what could come next. Whether you want to talk about Obama when he was going out and having the ability, I think he's even not caught, he said it like on a public appearance when he was with Putin, that he will have more wiggle room after his election. You want to talk about Donald Trump and his willingness to forego any of the principles that got him elected in the first place. All these people, really all they care about is seemingly lining their own pockets, taking care of themselves and their families first, not caring about the people that they govern, and getting to a point where they have this power, this lame duck power, where what they're doing is no longer affecting their ability to receive votes. And with that, we get what we have now. And this integration, what scares me the most is the fact that Israel, from their inception and even before they were actually a true bona fide state, Israel has been known to steal technology. Israel has been known to place spies and assassins and you name it in terms of spy networks and counterinsurgents and the like, right? And so we're setting ourselves up to give them some of the most, and I don't know the details, I don't know what's going to be shared, but we already give them so much of our technology. I can't imagine they don't have a bunch of it. Making this formal, I'm assuming giving them access to, manuals, blueprints, the like. Setting ourselves up for an absolute stab in the back. I don't know really what else there is to say, but I could guarantee you that if you were to poll this to the American people and ask what they thought, a heavy majority would not be a fan of doing this with any country in the world, let alone Israel. And yet here we are. We're going to have to see if this gets passed. My gut feeling is that this will go through. There is enough Democratic support to outweigh whatever libertarian-leaning Republican there may be that may have an issue with this. We're going to get to a point where, what's going on here with our relationship with Israel seems like it is never going to have a sunset. And oddly, I think that we're at a point as the country as a whole where if we cannot take care of our relationship with Israel, if we cannot, actually be the big boy in the relationship, the one that wears the pants, whatever metaphor you want to use, if we can't get to a point where we are actually determining the outcome instead of letting them run rogue, letting them rope us into endless conflicts like they have for decades upon decades now, if we're unable to straighten them out when they do things like run a genocidal operation for 2+ years, pick your poison. But if we are unable to actually put an end to it, I truly believe that, number one, whatever credit we have with the world is gone if it's not already. But number two, we are linking ourselves to one of, if not the most evil regimes to actually exist in modern day. And not only that, half of our country, or seemingly something like half of our country, doesn't see it. And that's not Republican or Democrat. Almost all of these news networks, the mainstream news as they're known, even though they don't get nearly as many eyeballs and listeners as off the network shows, of course, like this one, but I'm not claiming to be big. Things like Joe Rogan, things like Daryl Cooper, things like Dave Smith, things like, I don't even know if they're big anymore, but Pod Save America, The Daily Wire, all these different things. They don't get the views, and yet what they have is basically a generation captured. Anybody that's older than 50, generally speaking, still trusts them for their news on the whole. And with that, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about Fox News, whether you're talking about CNN, whether you're talking about NBC or any of these, they are all, generally speaking, pro-Israel. So as much as they may hate Trump, some of them, they're going to be pro-Israel when it comes to it, and they're not going to speak out against something like this because, number one, it's their donor class and basically how they survive, and number two, a lot of them deeply feel a Zionist lean, whether they have Jewish background themselves or whether, again, they are funded by them or any combination of the two. That is where we're at. That is the generational capture, and it is something that we are really struggling through as a country. And I don't think that, this is just my opinion, I don't think that we're going to be able to overcome that hurdle until the generation that is older than 50, which is really 2 generations, until those generations start to fall from power, and yet they still continue to win time and time again. Whether you want to talk about people like Schumer, people like McConnell, people like Donald Trump, or whoever you want to bring up, Pelosi, of course, any of these people just continue to win elections even though they've done nothing but make whatever they're governing worse. And with that said, if we're not going to be able to get them out and they're basically going to have to die off, then we have, I would say, at least another 10 to 20 years of dealing with this shit until we can actually start to rid Israel as an ally. And even at that point, I think that there's going to be such an integration, given the way that things are going, given the fact that this bill even exists when our founding fathers are rolling in their graves saying, what the hell are we doing? This steamroll is going to continue to roll over any chances that we have of getting out of this one-sided relationship. And I think that we're in major trouble as a country. You know, whether you want to talk about the internal infrastructure, whether you want to talk about our economy, whether you want to talk about the fact that, you know, anything relating with construction, the workers are aging out and there's not replacements coming in. We're not actually doing anything. We're not actually making our country better. We're sapping the wealth of our people in order to give it to other countries, and our people are not feeling any benefit whatsoever from what is going out of their paychecks. And it's gotten to a point now where, you know, we can't go on much further. You know, housing prices go up much more. If the cost of goods, cost of living goes up much more, we're going to be at a point where there's going to be a lot of people in trouble, and there already is a lot of people in trouble. And yet the focus of our country seems to be on stupid shit like formally joining our military forces with that of Israel. You know, if I haven't talked about enough on the show and previous shows about how much of a bad idea it is, I will do my best to do so in further episodes, because it's really making me sick as to just how much of their bidding we're doing as a nation, and also doing so at the point where we are no longer doing what the American people are supporting. So with that, I want to move on to something that is affecting me and everybody here in the Northeast. If you're living up here, you know what I'm talking about. And that, of course, is this new wave of wildfires happening just outside of Toronto right now. Now, thankfully, thank God, we are heading towards what looks like the end of this event. That being said, I had a few thoughts, and I'm going to try to make this quick. But number one is that I'm sure you guys all remember my friend John McLennan. He lives up in Canada. We talked about this, I want to say, maybe 2 years ago when there was the wildfires then, and talking about the poor management of the forest areas in Canada and how this is going to continue to happen. And you look back on it, and it has now been years. I want to say at least 3, 4, maybe even 5 years in a row where we have had massive, massive issues in terms of the air quality being affected here in the northeastern, even just northern part of the United States, and being affected because Canada is continuing to have wildfires consistently every single year. And it gets to a point where I have a couple of questions. Number one is, does the Canadian government really have any idea what they're doing? Is it possible that Canada knows exactly what they're doing and they're doing it to us on purpose? Because again, it's not like this is something that is like a one-off thing. This has happened at least 3 or 4 years in a row. It may even be more than that. Now, I do not, for the life of me, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember this ever happening as a kid growing up here. I've lived in New Jersey my whole life. I don't remember one time being like, well, hey, you know, we can't go play baseball today. The air quality is so bad from the fires in Canada. Never in my life until whenever the first time this fucking happened. And it's honestly, it's getting to a point now where I'm wondering again, is it on purpose is getting to a point where we need to do something as Americans to protect our own people and try to get to the bottom of why the fuck this keeps happening in Canada. You know, the wildfires happen all over the place, whether you want to talk about the Maui fires, whether you want to talk about what happened in Los Angeles a year or two ago now, whether you want to talk about even the fire in the fires in the Pine Barrens in South Jersey. There are fires that happen all the time here in the United States. Number one, once something like that happens, generally speaking, Americans band together and they do not let it happen in that area again. Number two, when these things happen, they seem to be more sparse and in some instances may even seem to be more controlled than what's going on with Canada. I don't mean to be the tinfoil hat guy, but I will a little bit in this scenario. Whether you want to talk about what happened in Hawaii, whether you want to talk about what happened in LA, there's a lot of connection to possibility of some dark behavior in that situation. So I don't know what to say. All I know is that whatever keeps happening, it is disturbing. It continues to affect us here outside. You know, I work outside every single day of the week. It gets really fucking hot this time of year. I generally don't complain about it. I mean, I'll complain to my inner circle here, but I'm not going to come on here and bitch and moan. But what I will complain about is going and having to work out in 95, 100-degree heat. And on top of that, I'm breathing in smoke all day. This shit just has to end. And we need to find a solution, whether that is a joint operation between our Forest Services and Canada's and making sure that whatever their dead wood is cleaned up, that they're doing controlled burns, that they're logging out old growth and getting shit taken care of before it becomes a problem. Whatever it is, we need to do it. It is not healthy. You know, again, I'm not one to bitch and moan about what it's like outside. I deal with it every day. But breathing in smoke all fucking day is not good. It can't be good. And we're not even the worst of it. I saw that there were numbers. I'm not sure if you guys know this. I had to do research because I didn't know what the fuck I was looking at. The air quality index is on a scale to 500, 0 to 500. Generally speaking, you're going to sit anywhere between like 20 and 50, we'll say, and that's generally considered healthy. What I'm assuming those numbers mean is parts per million of particles or something. I'm not claiming to know. I just know the scale goes to 500. Anywhere above 100 is considered, generally speaking, dangerous. We were sitting at between 150 and 250 for 3 days in a row. And we weren't even the worst of it. There were parts of Pennsylvania, there were parts of Ohio, and there were parts of New York State that were in the 400s. And you got to imagine, you know, it was disturbing. I've been coughing a lot, but generally I feel okay. I can't imagine how somebody who has health problems, respiratory problems, someone who's older, I can't imagine how their body's dealing with it. And if they don't have the ability to stay inside all day, I genuinely do not know just how bad this is going to be. I'm sure that doctors could tell you a whole lot better than me. Someone who studied it can tell you a whole lot better than me. But where I'm coming from, and where I'm hoping to get to, is the fact that this shit can end. It's gotten past the point that I'm frustrated. I am beyond frustrated. I am pissed off. I am so fucking tired of this happening year after year and there being not even semblance of a talking point of trying to come to a solution. And like I said, I'm fucking tired of it, man. It has gotten to that point. Now, lastly, to end the show, I'm going to talk a little bit of sport. I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet, high and tight, because I got to end on a happier note than that, right? First of all, the World Cup just ended about an hour before I started recording this or so. Congratulations to Spain. I don't give a shit. I hope you had fun. Hope you enjoyed the United States. Bravo. I wanted to talk about something with the New York Yankees. So if you don't care, tune out. I love you. Hope you enjoyed the show. Peace out. If you do care, I want you to listen to this and let me know what you think about this. First of all, I should have asked this before I told those people to go. If you got comments on what I had to say about the fires, about Lindsey Graham's sister, about anything that had to do with Israel, anything has to do with our operations, let me know in the comment. Leave a like on the video if you liked it. Now, for the people that are sticking around for the Yankees talk, I really want you to let me know what the fuck you're thinking, because I've lost my mind with the New York Yankees. Okay. Where we're at is we no longer have Aaron Judge. I'm of the belief he's probably not going to play again this season. So we have an anemic offense. We have tons of injuries. And the one thing that's decent, pretty good, is our bullpen, and more specifically, our closer. Very good. David Bednar is phenomenal. One of the best in the game right now. And the biggest talking point right now on Yankees Twitter, Yankees news, trade rumors around the trade deadline is that the Yankees want to target Mason Miller. And if you don't know Mason Miller is a fireballer, great pitcher. He's a closer. If you are one of the Yankee fans that thinks that getting Mason Miller and adding him to the team, and you think that's a benefit, sincerely, shut the fuck up. You're not watching the same game. You may not even be watching the games. You need to stop talking. You need to stop giving this air. This is one of the worst things that you can do. And why is it the worst? Well, our closer is a closer. He does well in the closing role. If there was someone to take that closing role who is better than him, he will not do well in the 8th inning. How do I know that? Don't have a great explanation. I'm just telling you that's what's going to happen. You want to wonder why Camilo Doval is not as good as he used to be on the Giants? Part of the reason, not all of it, part of it is the fact that he is a closer. He has a closer's mentality, and now he's pitching in the 6th, 7th, and 8th. And he clearly doesn't like it, doesn't perform. The same fucking thing will happen to David Bednar, guaranteed. And not only that, again, to reiterate, the bullpen is not the fucking problem. The problem is the fact that we cannot hit the fucking ball. Our pitching has been phenomenal this year. We can't back up our pitching, whether that's shitty play in the field or not scoring runs. We need to solve that. Not getting Aaron Judge back, we need a massive, massive addition, probably at 3 different positions. Whether you want to talk about catcher, whether you want to talk about shortstop, whether you want to talk about third base, we need additions in those spaces. We do not need a bullpen piece, and we definitely don't need a starter. So that's my piece on the Yankees. I'm fucking tired of it. I'm tired of all this shit. I hope you guys had a great week. I hope you guys have a wonderful week coming up. Let me know if you like the show. If you have comments, leave them down below. Other than that, I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace out.
I want to be something, not nothing. Trapped inside my dream and I'm running away from these demons. But the feeling's so good, I'ma keep dreaming.